Good afternoon, wrestling fans, and welcome to Port Huron High School, the scene of this afternoon's triangular meet between Port Huron High, Port Huron Northern, and Marysville. We're going to be covering just the Port Huron High Northern segment of the match this afternoon. My name is Rich Rennan, and I'll be doing the play-by-play, and right by my side is Bob Beeden, who will be doing the color analysis here for our match between Port Huron High and Port Huron Northern. These teams have met before this year in various tournaments and so forth, but I believe this is the first dual meeting between the two, isn't it, Bob?
It's my understanding that this is the first dual meet this year between these two teams, as well as the first dual meet with Marysville, which will be occurring later on in the evening between these teams.
Port Huron High is bringing in a rather inexperienced wrestling team this year. They're kind of struggling along in some respects, but the kids have been improving. We saw a match here last week where Port Huron High defeated Grosse Pointe South, and the wrestlers did quite a good job there that night. On the other hand, we have Northern with a lot of experience, a lot of senior wrestlers. Kids have been at it for a long time, and so there's a little bit of imbalance here experience-wise. But when these two schools get together in any kind of a contest, it's usually heated, isn't it?
Yeah, anything goes. Probably similar to the University of Michigan and Michigan State. And Coach Roy Johnson has done a very fine job of bringing along this team. As you watch them throughout the year, you can see great improvement in all the wrestlers, both in their conditioning, their technique, and just the fundamental soundness with which they wrestle.
And another thing about Roy's teams that you always notice, Roy's teams are always well-conditioned, and they're always aggressive. And that makes a big difference in the wrestling match. And sometimes you can overcome some experience deficits once in a while with nothing like experience, but once in a while you can overcome some of that inexperience.
Well, that conditioning is very important, especially when you get into the third period or if you have to go overtime. And Roy is a strong believer in fundamentals. He and I have talked a couple of times about how important it is to be in shape and know the basic moves, because without those you have nothing to return to. Sometimes you get in nowhere, no man's land, and you just feel like you're nowhere, and it's then back to basics.
Well, this should be a good match. I expect there's some pretty good matchups here tonight and this afternoon, and we're going to, I think we're going to see some real good wrestling here.
Well, Rich, pass along a compliment to the Marysville team as well. Nice article in the paper last night, the Times-Herald, and they were crowned St. Clair County Area League champions, and their coach is back after a year's leave of absence, I believe, from the sport of wrestling, and obviously he's done a very fine job.
Takes time. Wrestling programs aren't built overnight, and it does take a lot of years, and the younger these guys can start wrestling, the better off they are. We have a junior high program here now for the last 4 or 5 years in Port Huron, and I think that the junior high programs are starting to pay off in terms of our varsity programs.
Well, they sure do, and of course, like you have said, there's no substitute for experience, but the important thing here also is that you begin to get a blend of wrestlers. You like to have a team that's a few sophomores, a few more juniors, and then quite a few seniors, and as you move on, then you got a nice fresh group of kids coming up, and you got real balance. You hate to have everybody a senior and lose everybody at once, and that's back to the pits.
Okay, we're about ready to go here. We're going to start off at the 103-pound weight class, where we have Jim Lee of Port Huron High versus Kevin Beeden. That name sounds familiar, of Port Huron Northern. Beeden is 17-10 on the season, and Kevin Lee is 1-4 at the varsity level. Okay, and we're off. The all-important takedown at stake here. Opening match, and the takedown by Beeden, making the score 2-0 early in the first period. My partner's left the mic here. He's got a little bit at stake here in his match. I think he'd rather watch this one from the sidelines. 1:36 left in the first period. Score 2-0 favor of Kevin Beeden of Port Huron Northern. we'll be talking two types of scores here during the match. There'll be an individual match score, and then there'll be a team score that we'll be accumulating as we go along. So we'll try to make that clear as to what score we're talking about, a team score or the individual match score. We have actually two matches going on right now. We have a JV match between Port Huron Northern's JVs and Port Huron High's JVs. You may catch a glimpse of that from time to time on your TV screen. Okay, referee indicating that back points are going to be awarded here. There'll be at least 3 points, if not a pin. Looks as though we're close to a pin here, though. Okay, Jim Lee fighting real hard to avoid that pin. Kevin Beaton in good position here to score a pin. 23 seconds left in the first period. Beaton using good balance. He's got his hips down low and he's got his weight position just about right. Puts in a reverse half. Nelson. Jim Lee doing a good job of fighting it off, and he made it. So it'll be 3 points awarded for the near fall points, making the score 5-0 in favor of Kevin Beaton of Port Huron High, and we move into the second period. Okay, it appears we're going to have a reversal here, but not until there's control. Okay, it looks like there is going to be 2 points awarded. As soon as Beaton gets his arm free, it'll be 2 points. There it is. 2 points reversal, making the score 7-0. Beaton still in control, has not lost control, even though it may appear to some people, novice fans, that he has lost control. He hadn't lost control. Now he's got him in the cradle. He's got his shoulders exposed. It's going to be at least 3 more, and there's the pin. So with 1:10 left in the second period, we have a pin by Kevin Beaton of Port Huron Northern against Jim Lee of Port Huron High, and the team score with that pin now is 6-0 in favor of the Huskies from Port Huron Northern. We move now into the 112-pound weight class, where we have Bill Brewster of Port Huron High, who is 3-9 on the season, versus Bill Brewster of Port Huron High versus Jim Reeves of Northern. Jim Reeves is 24-2, which is a heck of a record for this point in the season. And Jim's a pretty doggone good wrestler, isn't he, Bob?
Well, Jim works very hard, got good work ethic, and even on a bad day, why, he's very, very strong. He's fundamentally sound, and he knows a variety of moves to capitalize on his opponent's mistakes.
Okay, the score is 2-0 in favor of Jim Reeves on the takedown. Back points were not awarded there because shoulders were not less than 45 for the required length of time. But it appears we're going to have back points here at least. If not a pin, we're going to have back points.
He's got a figure 4 on the head there, Rich, which is illegal on the body, but it is permissible on the head. And it was ruled illegal a few years ago because of the damage that it could do to your internal organs.
Now, is that also when if he's got the foot at the knee, it's still illegal now?
Well, I suppose that's the referee's judgment call, but the scissors is still legal, and sometimes it's difficult to know on the way into a figure 4 whether it's the scissors or just what the situation is.
Okay, 1 point escape for Bill Brewster, making the score 5-1 now. Team score 6-0 with the pin by Kevin Beaton of Port Huron Northern over Jim Lee in the 103-pound weight class. It's going to be at least 3 more points awarded here. Should make the score 10-1. Again, the referee will not award those points until that particular pinning combination is relinquished.
the legs being in the way they are there, Rich, that's called a grapevine frequently, and you just wind your legs around the other guys and stretch them out and lift them up with the idea that if you lift up his legs while you're pushing down on his shoulders automatically at the same time. And this young man did a fine job of staying alive and bridging, and of course that's the team part of wrestling, is that when you're in trouble you sure don't want to get pinned, because it's the difference between 3 and 6 points.
Okay, with those 3 points for the back points, the score is now 10-1 in favor of Jim Reeves of Port Huron Northern over Bill Brewster of Port Huron High. And we're just into the second period.
Well, credit should go to Coach Johnson. He obviously has his wrestlers prepared and ready to go. They're certainly not giving up, as evidenced in both matches where they were in pinning situations, but neither one of them gave up, and that's a real tribute to the coach and to the wrestlers and to their future.
Same thing I noticed last week in the match against Grosse Pointe South when Port Huron High won last Thursday night. The wrestlers were very determined, very aggressive, on the takedowns and in all situations, really. .110 left in the second period, score 12-1 in favor of Jim Reeves of Port Huron Northern. Brewster's going to make something happen here, right?
Well, yes, Jim set up a little different, and of course that's a nice variation as you go through the year, why people watch you know what you can do, and by what we sometimes refer to as a touch start, why you can throw your opponent off because they're accustomed to having that arm around the waist and on the arm, and they refer to that at different methods, but I like to refer to it as a touch start because that's exactly what you're doing, just putting your hands on the back and touching them.
Again, it looks like 3 points at least here for the near fall. 41 seconds left in the second period. Okay, Brewster doing a good job of fighting off that pinning combination. 16 seconds left in the second period, score 15-1.
You see the one wrestler's helmet is coming off there, Rich, and I guess in the good old days, you know, they didn't have those, but they sure are an important thing because your head does take a considerable amount of abuse, and without those, your ears and back of your neck and side of your face can really get hurt, and sometimes even your chin. So they are an important part of the wrestling sport, similar to football, Rich, where you better play with a helmet.
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure. That's for sure. In wrestling, your ears end up looking kind of funny.
Occasionally, I think I know somebody that didn't play with a helmet, but it's advisable.
I've been accused of that myself. Okay, the score now is beginning of the third period, 15-1.
Jim Reeves tried to stand up for the television audience. It's nice to begin to learn some of these holds, and then he tried to switch. He's now trying to roll or a switch.
Now what you have here really is Bill Brewster's a pretty inexperienced wrestler. He's only got 12 varsity matches in this year, and I believe he's only a sophomore. And Jim Reeves has considerable experience on Bill Brewster at this point, but you got to give Brewster credit for hanging in there and fighting. The experience is obvious. Okay, we have what happened there, Bob. You're going to have to explain it.
Well, I think that was a superior decision with the number of points that were scored, which is then equal to a pin.
Okay, so that would make the, well, it must be 5 points because the team score now they're indicating is 11-0. So it's 5 points. So that is 11-0 favor of Northern. And we move along now into the 119-pound weight class where we have Frank Klingbill of Port Huron High versus Ryan Radigan of Port Huron Northern.
Well, this looks pretty evenly matched here, Rich. Ryan is in either his first or second varsity match, and he's quite aggressive, and he likes this kind of sport, and he's got a great future.
Yeah, he sure does. I remember watching Ryan back in 8th grade, 7th grade when he first started wrestling, and he just kind of showed that natural inclination for the sport right away. He had that balance and just that aggressiveness that you need. And
he's got a good attitude towards it. It's
Ryan Radigan is now 2-2 on the season at the varsity level, and Frank Klingbill is 6-13. Score is 2-0 on the takedown by Ryan Radigan of Port Huron Northern, and again the team score 11-zip favor of the Huskies.
The hold that Ryan has there is frequently referred to as a type of armbar. There are many names given to things, but when you have an armbar, it's much like a crowbar where you're trying to put your arm under his and over his back and pry him into the position that you want him. There's a variation of the old playground full Nelson. Full Nelson's illegal, but a half or three-quarter Nelson is legal.
In fact, a little irony here in this match, Ryan Radigan wrestled for Roy Johnson out at Fort Gratiot. He got his first 2 years of experience, and then under Roy out there when Roy was at Fort Gratiot.
And Roy always speaks highly of him. He's really sprouted up in the last year or two.
Yep. I've watched him play soccer too, and he's a heck of a soccer player. He's a heck of a competitor on the soccer field also.
Well, right now he's got the half in and he's trying to run it, and by running it we mean that you walk around towards the other wrestler's head in order to make him give or submit into being turned over on his back, and it's pretty strenuous on you in the bottom when somebody's trying to do that, and so you either kind of give up and go, or else you have to try a move to counteract what's being done to you.
Okay, the score is 2-0 now in favor of Ryan Radigan of Port Huron Northern as we move into the second period.
Well, Ryan tried to switch there, and he had a good start on it. The Port Huron Big Red wrestler did a nice job of keeping a tight waist and grabbing an arm to prevent that from happening. This is kind of a bad position to be in for the Northern wrestler. He needs to get up. He did get up to his base. Otherwise, if you stay down there and that arm gets worked over, why, it was a nice stand-up.
Okay, there's no points awarded there, though, because he didn't escape. He still remained under the control of Frank Klingbill. So even though he did get to his feet there, he still did not relinquish control.
Right, they were out of bounds. Now, if he stands up again, what he wants to do is run and twist. There was a nice switch attempt and a nice tight waist ride by the Port Huron Big Red rider.
Radigan's doing a good job of staying on his base, though. Even though he's got that one arm tied up. Oh, we're about to get a reversal here, it looks like. Okay, the head's out, and there's control. 2 points reversal, making the score 4-0. Favor of Ryan Radigan with just under 1 minute left in the second period. And there's the pin. Okay, so we have a pin at 119. Ryan Radigan of Port Huron Northern over Frank Klingbill of Port Huron High. And that now makes the score 17-0 in favor of the Huskies as we move into the 125-pound weight class. At 125, we have Tom Gates of Port Huron High versus Cass Lowry of Port Huron Northern. Cass Lowry is 15-10 on the season, and Tom Gates is 3-8. So again, there's a big disparity here between the number of matches these boys have had. 11 for Gates and 25 for Lowry.
Well, I think Coach Johnson's doing the right thing in bringing them along at the proper speed, in that you don't want to throw people into the lions and get them discouraged and feel that they're so far over their head that they get discouraged or quit. You want to build like you would build a wall. You want to build confidence. You want to build skills. You want to build technique. You want to build confidence, and that's what is important. Sometimes people get fed to the lions and they just end up quitting because they're just overmatched, and who wants to be part of that?
Okay, no score in the 125-pound weight class. 124 left in the first period.
kind of interesting, even though that they're the same weight, that there's a little bit of difference in their body structure. One wrestler is kind of tall and lean, and the northern wrestler is a little shorter and stockier.
Yeah, you would swear there was a weight difference, wouldn't you? But they all have to get on the scale before the match. I don't know if all the fans know that, but each one of these wrestlers has to stand on a scale, a certified scale, in the locker room in front of both coaches and meet a certain weight criteria. And that criteria is that, for instance, in this weight class at 125, neither one of these wrestlers can be even an ounce over 125. If that scale does not balance, he's got to figure out how to lose that weight before the match starts.
Well, that's for sure. Better not touch that top bar, or else it can get real traumatic. There are things that they try to do to weigh in the second time, or perhaps even the third time, but time is so short that there's not a lot you can do. Most good wrestlers try to make it the night before so that they can have a good meal, and then they'll lose that during the day and be right on weight, because the old adage is what you are today is what you ate tomorrow, because anything you ate today really doesn't have time to get into your system and provide a great deal of benefit to you. Might a little bit, but yesterday is better.
Boy, I've seen some wrestlers over the years do some crazy things to lose weight. They would clip fingernails, cut some hair off, and I even saw some of them spit into a bucket. Anything to lose that extra ounce or two that they have to make that scale balance in the middle. And like you said, that's not really necessary. They should have that weight under control prior to that match.
That's true. Where it gets tough is, of course, these young men are growing, and even when they work out with weights, why they're adding muscle mass and weight to their body. And there used to be that during the season you'd get a pound or two for growth and development. They no longer do that because it was abused, but you really have to get into it. It almost becomes a family thing in our house, why I think we all eat better as a result of our son having to stay at that particular weight, and because we don't want to be pigging out in front of him when,
that would make it tough on him,
when he's sitting there with a toothpick, you know.
Bob, can you tell us a little bit more? I'm not real familiar now. Apparently the state is regulating now how much a wrestler can lose. They weigh in initially at the beginning of the year, and then isn't there a formula or something that they follow in terms of how much weight they can lose during the season? Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular aspect of it. There may well be. I am familiar with the aspect that you have to weigh in and be certified at certain weights so that during the year you can't be moving up and down in various weight classes. And of course that would be important to do if your coach was trying to make sure that you were being matched up with certain people to guarantee wins all the time, and you could be running up and down between 3 or 4 weight classes. In addition to that, it wouldn't be fair to the other team wrestlers, and so there are some restraints on that.
It seems to me that I heard somewhere that they have a new form now where a wrestler weighs in at the beginning of the season and then is only permitted to lose a certain percentage of that weight or something from the day one, or there's a weigh-in day apparently early in the season. And I know there's a lot of concern about that when I was coaching 10 years ago, that some wrestlers were losing too large a percent of their body weight to make some of those lower weight classes. And we'd see wrestlers from a lot of times that would lose the required weight. They'd drop down 2 or 3 weight classes, but then they were so weak from starving themselves, not eating a proper diet, that they weren't in shape enough to wrestle. They weren't in condition to wrestle.
That can happen to you, especially if you don't eat right. And as we talked before, it's nice to make that weight and even be under the night before so you can have a good meal, and psychologically and strength-wise, I think it really helps you.
Okay, we have 9 seconds left in the second period. The score is 4-0 in favor of Cass Lowry of Port Huron Northern over Tom Gates of Port Huron High. And we just got 3 more near-fall points awarded, making the score 7-0 going into the third period. So Tom Gates not out of it yet. There's 2 minutes left, and the score is 7-0, so he's still in it, but he's got to make something happen right here.
Well, once again, you note that the Big Red wrestlers are in shape because they're ready to go. Now there's a hold. The
leg ride?
Well, I was going to talk about the Granby there, but he didn't have it long enough. The Granby is when the guy gets high and he's holding on, and you can grab a hold of his head and pull him over on top of you, and then you use his leg ride that he had on you to your advantage, because then he can't wiggle out of it very well. You've got him in a very bad position.
I didn't notice last week Coach Johnson's team using the leg ride as much as the Northern wrestlers do.
Well, the leg ride is extremely effective. It's something you have to be rather quick with, because if you don't do it, you're off balance. And I think that's a key point, that in nearly every hole that there is, one of the reasons there's a counter is that there's a particular point in that move that you're vulnerable. And if you understand that and you know the hold, you should also know the counter. You teach a hold, teach a counter, teach a hold, teach a counter, and that keeps you well abreast of the various holds that are going on. And then if you watch other wrestlers and you begin to see when they're applied, then that helps you. And wrestling has come so far now, and that coaches do study films, and much like they do in football. So you begin to know what somebody likes to do in certain situations.
Okay, we had a stand-up or an escape by Cass Lowry, making it one more point, making the score now 8, 9, 10. 10 now with the takedown makes it 10. So there was an escape for 1 and 2 points for the takedown. So now the score is 10-0 in favor of Cass Lowry, Port Huron Northern. 48 seconds left in the match. Tom Gates has got to make something happen here. And as we mentioned in our earlier broadcasts, it's not over till it's over, even if you're up 10 by 10 points.
Well, that's
certainly
right.
Not uncommon for a turnaround.
Well, it was just down in East Detroit that one of the Northern wrestlers was ahead, I believe, 7-2, and ended up getting pinned. And of course, that's no fun. And you just kind of walk off the mat shaking your head saying, what happened? But again, the beauty of wrestling is that no matter how far behind you are, as long as the match is going, you've got an opportunity to win.
.28 seconds left in the match. 10-0. Team score 17-0 in favor of the Huskies from Port Huron Northern.
Rich, for the audience, they may not be aware that each round is 2 minutes, 3 rounds, total of 6 minutes, and nowadays they do not count riding time, and so you can go into an overtime period. Now, we had an interesting overtime at the Blue Water Classic in that it went the 3 one-minute overtime rounds, and then it was decided by declaration in that the most aggressive wrestler was awarded the victory.
Okay, we have a victory at Cass Lowry over Tom Gates at Port Huron High at the 125-pound weight class. And we're moving now into the 130-pound weight class, where we have Barry DeCold from Port Huron High versus Ron Catanzaro of Port Huron Northern. Catanzaro is 26-5, pretty impressive record on the season, and Barry DeCold is 13-12. So we got a couple of pretty good wrestlers here. DeCold being a little over 500, Catanzaro winning all but 5 of his matches. So this record-wise, at least on paper, should prove to be a pretty good matchup.
Yes, it should. It's interesting. No matter what sport it is, you can have problems with the clock. We just had to work a couple out there. Ron Catanzaro wrestled one of the finest wrestling matches that I think I have ever seen down at East Detroit. He just was fired up from the go, and he was fired up during the entire match. And part of that was his ability to psych himself up, that he just knew he could do it. And he knew how much the team needed the points that he could score for him, and he really went after it.
By the way, I forgot to mention, though, at the end of that 125-pound weight class, Northern pulled ahead in the team score, 21-0, 4 points for, I think, a major decision. I think anything 8 or over is a major decision, which awards 4 points. A regular decision is 3 points, a major decision is 4 points, a superior decision is 5, and a pin is 6. And I believe that's the way the scoring goes. Okay, the score is 2-2 in this match. We had a takedown and a reversal, and now it appears we're going to get back points here. Catanzaro getting Barry DeCold into a pinning combination, and back points are definitely going to be awarded here, 3 of them.
Once again, now a good wrestler will use that chin as kind of a third arm, if you will. He's doing it now, pushing it on the shoulder to be able to push that shoulder down and at the same time lift up on the other wrestler's neck and head to force the shoulder blades down. Now, a lot of times the shoulders on the top are down, but it's not the shoulder blades, and it's the shoulder blades that they look for that must both be on the mat in order to be a pin.
Okay, 15 seconds left in the first period. Score 2-2, but it's actually 5-2 because there will be back points awarded here at the end of this spinning combination.
Well, you know, that's an interesting point because theoretically you could hold somebody in this position for the whole round and still only get 3 points, where if you let them up, did it again and did it again and did it again, you could get a whole lot more points. And of course, that's something that in a tough match that you have to consider. If you can't go for the pin, you want to get as many points as you can. And I've known of wrestlers who have let their opponent get back to a neutral position and take them down and get back points again. There was a nice reversal.
Okay, the score now then 7 with that reversal. We had 3 points for the back points, making it 5-2 in favor of Ron Catanzaro. But now with the takedown, it's a reversal. It's 7-2. 1:42 left in the second period. 7-2 in favor of Catanzaro of Northern.
Yeah, Ron will probably try the crossface or an arm bar here pretty quick. Now in this type of situation, you may think that the wrestler on the top is really being mean or tough on the guy, and of course he's trying to get the job done, but the pressure and the pain is really applied by the guy on the bottom who makes up the decision whether he wants to go with them or not.
Right.
And you know, it's one thing not to go, but you need to be able to work something off that, and if you do go with it, you need to be able to work something off from the fact that you're letting that Northern wrestler take you off the back.
Right, he put himself right on his back, wouldn't he?
Yes.
46 seconds left in the second period, 7-2. Excuse me, Bob.
Of course, one of the golden rules of wrestling is that you don't want to get too high, and that creates an awful lot of offensive moves when you get high. It's offensive from the time of perspective of number of points that are scored. It can also be offensive from the standpoint that you don't want to be there. Yeah. It can be a bad deal. So you like to keep yourself in the middle of your opponent's back, and another rule that I've heard used a lot is try to keep your chin down his spine and between his shoulder blades, somewhat like he's doing there now. And you can't do that all the time because you're obviously moving, but it's a point to return to that's
general
safe.
Rule.
Yeah, it's a point to return to that you're safe.
Well, we're closing here in the second period. Score still 7-2. Favor Ron Catanzaro over Barry DeCole, Port Huron High. Fairly close score, 7-2, 5-point difference. Again, could go either way.
Oh, for sure. The Big Reds are still in it. Still in it. I might also mention, Rich, that at the same time there's a second mat here in the gym where the junior varsity teams are wrestling. You know, the public is welcome to attend these wrestling matches, and we certainly would encourage them to come out and see Olympic-style wrestling. I know that sometimes wrestling perhaps has had a bad reputation or name from some of the type of wrestling that you see on TV that...
the Hulkster.
Yeah, there you go. But it's considerably different, and this is for real. And this is as real as basketball or football or volleyball or tennis or any of those sports. And we just encourage you to come out and see some Olympic-type wrestling.
Okay, we had a reversal. Ron Catanzaro scored a reversal, making the score 9-2 now. 1:14 left. 1:14 left in the third period. Team score 21-0, favor of the Huskies. We're at the 130-pound weight class. Barry DeCole of High versus Ron Catanzaro of Northern. You know, I might mention too, Bob, that Port Huron Northern's wrestling team is, last I heard, they were ranked in the state. I don't know if they're still up in that if they hold that lofty position or not. But Port Huron Northern's wrestling team is one of the better programs in the state in Class A.
Well, they were ranked 8th or 9th, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the power ratings this year in the Detroit paper, but they have been up there quite high, and that's a real tribute to Coach Baker and Jim Burnell, the athletic director, as well as in particular to the kids and the parents who come out and support it. You know, wrestling is an old sport, Rich. Goes way back to near the beginning of time. Probably the second oldest sport that we're aware of, and you'd be interested to know, Rich, that it was co-ed back then.
Oh, is that right? Co-ed?
I thought you'd like that. Yeah, it was co-ed back then.
Okay, and we have a victory here, scored 10-2 in favor of Ron Catanzaro of Port Huron Northern over Barity Colt of Port Huron High. Now that makes the team score 25-0, and we're moving now into the 135-pound weight class where we have Chris Ross of Port Huron High versus Tom Lowry of Port Huron Northern. Tom Lowry is 17-7 on the season, and Chris Ross is, well, we have a disparity here in terms of the statistics. I think he's 10-11. 10-11 at this point. So again, this should be a fairly good matchup.
Yeah, looks good.
Tell me a little more about this co-ed wrestling stuff. Sounds pretty interesting.
Well, I have to give credit for that information to a book by Art Thomas, who wrote this book on wrestling. I had a question for you, though. If wrestling was the second oldest sport, what do you surmise would have been the first sport?
Wrestling. Let's see. Marriage?
Well, I don't know about that, but according to this book, they surmise that probably running was the first known sport or first type of competition, and they talk about the fact that it probably resulted from either trying to catch food or as a result of taking it from somebody else and needing to get out of there quick. And then if they caught you, you need to know how to wrestle.
Yeah.
So I guess we can see that first and second thing coming up there pretty quick, right?
Well, I chose marriage because I know I got to be on my toes when my wife's around.
Hey, whatever you say is fair there.
Okay, 2 points on a takedown. Tom Lowry over Chris Ross at this point, 2-0. 55 seconds left in the first period. Team score again, 25-0, favor of the Huskies.
Kind of an interesting point here is one of the reasons that they know that wrestling is such an ancient sport is that in Egypt, on many of the tombs and in some of the caves, they found hieroglyphics and pictures of people wrestling. And it was a type of sport that was held in extremely high esteem and was a real sign of mental ability as well as brawn.
21 seconds left in the first period, score 2-0 in favor of Tom Lowry from Port Huron Northern. And we're at the end of the first period. Score still remains 2-0 in favor of Tom Lowry from Port Huron Northern.
Rich, I got another quiz for you here.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Which book do you feel first described a wrestling match?
Well, my guess would be the Bible.
Hey, you're right on the money. Jacob is said to have wrestled with a man all night and that he held him in this hold for such an extended period of time that the other man finally gave up, but in the process dislocated his shoulder.
That wouldn't happen today, though, right, with our rules?
Well, I would hope not. There have been some injuries, though, just like in any sport, they can occur, but these athletes are so thoroughly conditioned that their bodies can sure take a lot more than mine can.
Score is still 2-0. We're 1:29 left in the second period. Still a lot of time left, but not a lot of points being scored here.
Well, you mentioned conditioning. You know, wrestlers are literally conditioned from their head to their toe.
Whoa, nothing can be done much about that. We had the Port Huron wrestler, Chris Ross, was trying to pull Tom Lowry back onto the mat. And in doing so, Lowry kind of turned his body, and I think his lower leg stayed stationary, where the rest of them went to his left there. And I think he had a bit of a twist there, but we have both coaches out there, Roy Johnson and Dick Baker, taking a look at it, and they'll determine whether he can continue or not.
Well, that's a real class act on Coach Johnson's part to come over and take a look, because nobody likes to see anybody get hurt, and he came over to see if he could help out a little bit, and that's sincerely appreciated. I have been at meets where that has not been the case, and I do not believe it shows good sportsmanship or, for that matter of fact, concern for a fellow human being. So our hats off to Coach Johnson for caring enough to come over.
Roy's very well versed too in sports medicine. He's taken a lot of class work, collegiate class work, and he's gone to a lot of clinics, and he does know his sports medicine. I know he's given me an awful lot of advice on various injuries my football players and wrestlers have had.
Well, here's the switch. Here's the switch. It's a nice switch because Lowry has his leg inside, and while it didn't work, it did put his opponent in a bad position, and we'll see what he's able to do here. This is a short fireman's call to firemen's, because there's an instance where a fireman might be rescuing somebody from a house. They put you on your shoulders, and that's the situation here.
45 seconds left in the second period. Score now 2-2. Bob, I don't remember how the 2 points were scored there. Do you? Was it a reversal? We're going to have at least 3 points awarded here. And there's a pin. And we have a pin here at 135-pound weight class. Chris Ross of Port Huron High pinning Tom Lowry of Port Huron Northern for 6 points. The score now 25-6 in favor of Port Huron Northern.
Well, that was a nice win for the Port Huron High Big Reds.
Okay, 140 pounds. We have Steve Groh of Port Huron High versus Doug Crosby of Port Huron Northern. Crosby's 11-10 on the season, and Steve Groh is 3-4. Again, pretty big disparity in terms of numbers of varsity matches.
Well, Doug Crosby's come on later on here in the year, and as he's gained experience, he's improved, and he's tried to learn some new holds and some new counters, and it's evident that the Port Huron High wrestler also is well conditioned again and knows some holds, because he's trying to try Crosby up. Neither one of them have points here as a result of neither one having control of the other.
Steve Groh, I know, has wrestled for several years now. He wrestled at Chippewa Intermediate School for a couple of years, and I think this is either his first or second year over here at Port Huron High.
Who was his coach out there?
I believe it was Andy Rosales.
Andy's a fine coach.
He's doing nothing but refereeing at this point. He's not coaching anymore, but he's reffing a lot of high school and junior high matches this year.
And for the audience, the referee had his arms out straight, indicating that there was no control. And boy, this is a real test of wills and strength here to see who's going to give in first.
We'll get a nice close-up on that one. Still nothing. Nobody has control. It appears that Crosby's got control because he's got him in a headlock, but there really is no control, and you can see the referee indicating that no one's in control at this point. It would appear to the novice fan, though, that there is control. Nothing yet. As long as Groh can keep those 2 points up and step on his base, he really doesn't have control. Crosby doesn't really have control. And he can't spin into it either, so still 0-0. There's a couple of determined guys, I'll tell you.
Well, no matter who wins this will be a good match for both of them, because they're both having to work very, very hard.
Steve Groh did, right at the buzzer, get that takedown, and so the score is 2-0 favor of Steve Groh from Port Huron High over Doug Crosby of Northern. I think Coach Johnson's been moving a lot of kids in and out of this varsity roster. I think in a number of weight classes we're looking at different kids tonight than we did last Thursday. in their match with Grosse Pointe South.
Well, that's probably important in building a squad, giving a lot of people experience, keeping their spirit and morale up, and finding out who can actually do the job under match conditions.
1:45 left in the second period. Score is still 2. Oh, and we have a pin. Doug Crosby pinning Steve Groh of Port Huron High for 6 more team points. Port Huron Northern. And that makes the score 30-6 now in favor of the Huskies. All right, we're going to move into the 145-pound class where we have Andy Moore of Port Huron High versus Ken Meinhardt of Port Huron Northern. Ken Meinhardt, 26-1 on the season. Andy Moore of Port Huron High at 145 is 11-9.
Are you ready for another question, Rich?
Ready to go.
All right. According to Greek mythology, to which 2 gods did they establish the Olympic Games after?
Which 2 gods did they establish the Olympic Games after?
Yep.
Zeus and Moose. I don't know.
Well, hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I know you knew that too.
I didn't. No, I knew Zeus was
You're just playing the buffoon, Rich. It was Zeus and Kronos were the 2 gods, and the match was over Earth, and Zeus won, according to Greek mythology.
Actually, Bob, Zeus is probably the only Greek god I could name.
Well, the Olympic Games are always dedicated to Zeus.
I think this is going to be an interesting match. You got one senior wrestler who is extremely experienced and accomplished, wrestled this summer in Russia. And you got Andy Moore, a little bit younger, a couple years behind Ken, but coming along as a wrestler, wrestled since 7th grade. This is probably his 3rd or 4th year in competitive wrestling. I think that was ill-advised there. He kind of tried a muscle move there, and I don't think you're well advised to try a muscle move on somebody like Ken Meinhardt.
Well, it's nice that he had confidence in himself to try, and of course, that's great, and urge him to continue to try to do that. But once again, as we mentioned before, with every move, there's a point where you're in no man's land, and if you don't go all the way through with it, you can be in trouble, and that's what happened there. But not every hold works, and so you have to know a variety of them.
Well, I don't think you want to try a muscle move on somebody like Ken Meinhardt.
Well, he is quite strong. And the other thing that's so important is that he knows so many counters.
Okay, the score is 2-0 then in favor of Ken Meinhardt from Northern. 40 seconds left in the first period. Score is still 2-0. Team score 30-6, favor of the Huskies.
You never want to become too confident because things can happen awful quick.
"20 seconds left in the first period.
Rich, I must be getting old or something, but it seems like this season has just gone by in the twinkling of an eye.
Well, it is a shorter season now than it was back when I coached. I know that they're talking now that the state competitions start within a week or 10 days. And, geez, we never even thought about the district wrestling tournament until I think around the 1st of March.
But I think
the state has shortened the season, haven't they?
Perhaps time-wise, but what's happened is there are so many tournaments where people may wrestle 4 or 5 times in a day, and you even get into a 2-day tournament like they did down in Macomb, and so you really can accumulate a lot of experience and matches in a short period of time now.
I know when I was coaching it, we had a lot more. I was looking at their schedule. We had a lot more dual meets and triangular meets, such as the one we have here tonight.
Right.
And it seems like you said the emphasis now seems to be on the tournaments.
Well, I think from a cost factor as well as an efficiency factor, if you have to travel both ways, you might as well get your money's worth while you're there, and you see such a larger variety of wrestlers, and it just improves the quality and caliber of wrestling, because teams tend to have a favorite takedown, a favorite ride, a favorite pin hold or whatever, and the more of those you can see, the better you are.
Okay, we had a strange turn of events there. We had Ken Meinhardt having Andy Moore in a near fall situation, scoring 3 points there. The score anyway is 6-2. I'm not sure I know exactly what did happen there. We're talking away, and it was 2 points for a near fall, 2-point near fall. So it's probably 2-point reversal, 2-point near fall, and then I think Moore from Port Huron High was awarded 2 points for reversal.
Both athletes very well conditioned. There was that touch start.
Tell us about that, Bob.
Well, as we talked about a little earlier, anything that you can do that's out of the ordinary and legal to confuse or disorient your opponent, that's what you want to do. And frequently the wrestlers are accustomed to having somebody grab their elbow and around their waist. And if you can use that touch start, why, you can see what the other wrestler's first move is going to be. But one of the keys to that is you have to know counters.
Okay, the score is still 6-2. 39 seconds left in the second period. Ken Meinhardt over Andy Moore at this point, 6-2. "16 seconds left in the second period. Score 9-2 now on the reversal. Or was that your fault points again? Boy, I better start paying attention here. Team score 30-6 in favor of the Huskies.
Rich, are you into poetry?
Somewhat.
Well, Homer, one of the great poets, describes wrestling, and he describes a match between Ajax and Odysseus. And the sport was so important in the lives of Greeks, and they honored it so much that they would put the paintings and sculptures on their pottery as well as on their walls, and they would make murals of it.
I might suggest that to my wife for some wallpaper. She's doing the downstairs family room. I wonder if she'd like that design on her walls.
Well, whatever you like is fine.
Somehow I don't think she's going to want it.
Somehow I think if you complain too much, you may be putting it on yourself.
14-2 now, 1:30 left in the third period in the match. Ken Meinhardt over Andy Moore.
You know, at our age, Rich, discretion is always the better part of valor, you know.
Especially when dealing with your wife.
I got another one for you, Rich. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. What type of oil do you suppose the wrestlers covered their body with in ancient times? And if you can figure that out, why did they do it?
Well, let's see. It wouldn't be Mazola. It wouldn't be Crisco. How about olive oil?
Right on the money. And why would they do that, Rich?
To see, I think it would make it easier to slip out of a hold.
There you go.
Is that right?
Yeah, the book says, and
We're
we have to
making some
give
good
all the credit for this information to the gentleman who wrote this book, indicated that that was a common pre-match activity, is to cover themselves with olive oil so that they would be slippery and their opponent couldn't hang on to them.
Okay, just under a minute left in the third period. 14-2, Ken Meinhardt over Andy Moore at this point. And we're in the 145-pound weight class. Team score 30-6, favor of the Huskies. Okay, we're going to take a little break at the end of this match here in about 45 seconds to change our tapes, and we'll be back with you at the 152-pound weight class where we have Dan Dawson of Port Huron High versus Kevin Pagel of Northern. So if we're a little bit late getting back, that's what's coming up. We don't usually miss too much.
This young man's given Ken Meinhardt a real tough time. He's wrestling very smart, even though the score is 14-2. He's not giving up in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, we got near fall points, and we have a pin. Okay, so with that pin, now the score becomes Port Huron Northern 36, Port Huron High 6, and Ken Meinhardt over Andy Moore in the 145. We're moving along now, and we'll be right back.